Welcome back to Essence TV. My next guest is Dr. Paul Dalby from the Water Industry Alliance. He holds an Executive Diploma of Business Planning from the South Australian Enterprise Workshop, a science degree from Flinders University, a PhD from Adelaide University, and he's a member of the board of the Water Industry Alliance. Paul, it's great to have you on Essence TV. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, we're talking about the issue of water, which is a very pertinent topic in Australia at the moment, particularly the idea of reclaiming stormwater, collecting it, treating it and using it. What do other countries do with stormwater?
Yes, so it's a good question. All around the world, countries, populations are having to come up to the fact that they are running out of water, that the amount of water available is not enough to meet everybody's needs and desires. And so reclaiming, reusing water is now becoming more widespread. So for example, in Singapore, they drained one of their marinas and they turned it into a lake to store the stormwater in at the coast. So they're collecting the stormwater at the coast, treating it there and then reusing it in the city. In Phoenix, Arizona, where they, I guess a similar sort of situation to South Australia and Adelaide, they're a city which doesn't have very much rainfall, in fact much less than Adelaide, much higher temperatures, and they rely on a single river for their water supply. They are recapturing stormwater, treating it and putting it into the aquifer, and also wastewater, in fact, treating wastewater and putting the wastewater into the aquifer. So countries all around the world are starting to think about how they can make better use of water.
It's interesting, isn't it? Almost a very strange phenomenon that we're having places that are completely flooded out and mudslides and people lose their lives because too much water. Then there are other areas that are arid and people are having to leave there. How's Australia going on the issue of stormwater?
Well, Australia does okay. South Australia does very well. We are now recycling, I think we're recycling about a third of our wastewater. And obviously we've got the world-class stormwater recycling facilities out at Salisbury. And people come from all over the world to visit those wetlands. When we have international visitors to the Water Industry Alliance, it's one of the places we take them, and they're very, very impressed with what's going on out there. What's unique about what's happening at Salisbury is, for example, in places like Perth, they don't really have a stormwater system like we do because the soils are so sandy, the water just infiltrates through the soil and into the groundwater system. Whereas in Adelaide, the water tends to run off out into our coast. Because of the way we've changed the hydrology of our city, that's taking pollutants and sediments out into the coast, which is having a very major negative impact on our marine systems along the coastline. So less fish, many of our reef systems are dying, and our kelp forests are dying. So we've got a real issue in South Australia in wanting to recycle water for environmental reasons. We're also running short of water, so we need to recycle it for our own use. And what they've done out at Salisbury is be able to capture water, treat it and then inject it back into a confined aquifer, which is really quite unique in the world.
So how can we better utilise the water that we do get around Australia? Is it by setting up lots of wetlands like what Salisbury's done?
Well, I think in the bigger picture, most of the water that we use in Australia is to grow food, and most of the water we consume is actually water that's been used to grow food and wine and things that come out of agriculture. So we've really got to think about how we use water more efficiently in our agricultural systems. That's the first task we have. We also have to make some very tough decisions about how we allocate water and where we're going to see it used. And Australia has a very advanced system of water trading which allows us to do that using market forces rather than going through a process of government regulation and planning, which is slow and less responsive. So we have set up some good systems in Australia. We've got to do better. Part of the solution is to make better use of our water in the cities. Part of that is recycling, and part of that is people being more aware of how they use water around the house, not wastewater. That doesn't mean you can't have gardens and long showers, but it means being careful with the water that we have and understanding that it is a limited resource and it's scarce.
It was interesting recently to see or to hear of an article in National Geographic, an international magazine, that placed Adelaide on the top of the list of the places that may well have to shut down as a city because of the lack of water.
Well, I mean, it's a serious problem for Adelaide, and putting in 2 desalination plants will obviously mean that we won't have to close down the city now, but I still think that if we have another couple of years like we've had now, 2 desalination plants is not going to supply us the water that we're currently used to. And if we can't extract water from the River Murray and we have another few dry years, we are still going to have to severely limit the water that we use in Adelaide. Won't be shut down thanks to the 2 new desalination plants, but we're still facing very serious problems.
And so the development of the stormwater reclamation is going to also help that, because the desalination will be used for stormwater as well, I believe.
You can use desalination technology to clean stormwater. So one of the interesting things they're doing out at Salisbury is they're capturing stormwater. Stormwater is actually filled with very nasty chemicals, things that run off the road, nutrients from fertilisers from people's gardens. There's dog faeces, cat faeces. So all of these things are putting very nasty things into stormwater. And one of the really important advances in human health in the 20th century and 21st century has been to supply clean water to the population. So it's very important that we maintain very high standards of the water that we are drinking. And so what Colin and his team are doing out at Salisbury is using wind-powered desalination to clean up the water, the stormwater that they're collecting, without using any fossil fuels to power that desalination. So it's a really terrific system that they're developing.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And developing the biodiversity through the wetlands as well, using native plants and native fish, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So is stormwater reclamation something that's going to drought-proof Australia?
Definitely not. It's definitely not on its own going to help drought-proof Australia. In fact, the really serious issue we have in Australia is enough water for our irrigators in the Murray-Darling Basin system. They're under severe threat. Many have left the land, and in many areas there's no production at all. In our cities, desalination, wastewater recycling, stormwater recycling, demand management, making the best use of the water we have are all important ways of drought-proofing, if you like, our cities. So it's definitely an important part of the solution.
And the development of the technologies here in South Australia, are they going to serve the nation and hopefully the world, or is this something that's really just focused on our own state?
We have a particular type of aquifer system which is not common right across Australia, but it is relevant in some parts of Australia. We definitely do have the leading scientists in South Australia who are working on this aquifer storage and recovery of water, so where we're putting water down into a confined aquifer and then taking it back out again for human use. We have some of the best scientists and we have some of the leading examples of how to apply that science out at Salisbury. So we have some technology which is being looked at all around the world and adopted all around the world, and that's good for South Australia.
It certainly is for South Australia and the nation indeed. Yeah. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Paul Dalby is on the board of the Water Industry Alliance and chatting more about stormwater, possibly one part of the solution when it comes to water and securing our future here in Australia. When we come back, we'll be chatting with Dr. Stephen Clark from Flinders University, heading up a lot of clean tech developments through the university, and we'll be chatting to him about their involvement in stormwater reclamation. Don't go away. Back with more in a moment on Essence TV.